All right, now that you've hopefully mastered how to do interior elevations, especially because interior elevations of all the different view types, for an interior designer, these ones are the ones you'll definitely want to know how to create. That and the floor plans, because you'll need to be creating furnishings floor plans a lot. So those are probably the two views you need to be most familiar with and really excel at. Another view that you probably won't have to create that often as an interior designer, but you should know how to create, is a building section. So again, we'll go back to the main floor plan, and you can see I'm starting to get a lot of tabs up here. So this is where I would go to the view tab. Well, first I'm going to go to the main floor so that it's active. So here's my main floor, and I'm going to close the inactive views. So now my computer isn't trying to keep open all those other views and stress my computer out. So now you can see on the main floor plan, now that we added those interior elevations to sheets, you can see what it's done. It's filled out the sheet here and it's placed the view number, just like when we did the exterior elevations. All right, so sections. Again, like most other views, the place you go in order to start the command to create a section view is the view tab up on the ribbon. So go to the view tab and there's a command called section. So if you click that, what it wants you to do is draw a line where you want to cut the building. So we're going to make two sections today. And the one's called a longitudinal section. That's cutting the building down the long direction. And then there's a cross section that's cutting it across the short direction. And if a building is exactly square, then I don't know which one's longitudinal or which one's a cross section. Some are angled. And so I don't know. They don't always call them a longitudinal section or a cross section, but those are a main category of building sections. So we're going to create our longitudinal one right now. So I'm still in the command. I'm just going to click on one side and drag it across to the other. And you're going to see some familiar items. Wherever this section is located, so this is the section marker, and just like the other views, Revit has created a section marker, and it's also created a section view. So if you look over in your browser, there's now a category called sections, building sections. And now there's a view there. That's this view that you just created. All right, so we can move this wherever we want to cut the building. So let's cut it through, let's make it so it's cutting through the windows. And then we'll set the depth, and then we can set the left and right crop region. And then just like all of the other views, if you select the view and you double click the arrowhead, it will take you to the view. Oh, and I can see I cropped it too tightly because I cropped the roof on accident. There we go. Now here's your section. I'll crop the top and bottom to make it tidy. And there you go. You can see the roof. You can see your ceilings. You can see your walls. You can see the windows that you're cutting through. And if you go back up to the view tab and turn on thick lines, you can also it helps you see what's being cut. So the thick lines are all elements that are being cut. So there you go. You've created your first longitudinal section. So let's also name this. Call it long. I'm just going to do long for short, long section. And there you go. If you go back into the floor plan, you'll also notice the tag is a little bit different than the exterior elevations, and it's different than the interior elevations. It's got this long line to indicate where it's cutting, and then it's got a head at both ends. You can actually change what that looks like by clicking these little rotation arrows, and it'll rotate through the different options for section heads. And it depends on your template and your company. There might be a bunch of options. It looks like in the default template, there's just, you can either turn it on or turn it off. So traditionally, you would only have the tag at one end. So I'm going to shut it off at that end. And there you go. So we've set the depth. And depending on, again, company standards, you might want it to go the full depth of the building. Or sometimes I typically like to go very thin, because all I'm trying to show is just a very thin slice at that specific spot of what the building looks like. And do you see how it cleans it up a little bit? Whereas if I was to come here and change that like that, it's showing a bunch of other stuff that may not be relevant. Like it's showing the soffit way back on the other side of the room or the building, and I don't like that. So I personally tend to just make it a very thin slice, and it just makes it cleaner. The other way you can do this, and this is true with the elevation views, both interior, exterior, and the section views, if you click on nothing so that you're looking at the section views, there's also something called the far clipping offset. That is another way to change the depth of the view. So like, let's look at the floor plan right now. You can see if I click on it, it's got a very shallow depth. When I drag this arrow, it actually changes this far clipping offset. Now it's 22 feet. If I want it to be just 1 inch deep, I can click 1 inch, and do you see how it moved the far clipping region to just 1 inch away from the front of the view? So that's another way you could do that if you would like. So while we're in this view, I could change it back to 22 feet, and it'll show everything within 22 feet of where the views started, or I can change it back down to 1 inch, and it'll bring it back forward. So that's an alternate way of doing it. I'm going to turn off the crop region, and here is our section. Typically in a section, you would want to leave the levels on, and it's up to you if you want to hide the reference plane or not. Reference planes by default will not print, or they won't export when you make a PDF. They're only here for your use when you're drawing in the file. All right. Let's go back to the main floor plan, and now let's do our cross section. So we'll go back to the section command. And I forgot to tell you this the first time, but if you go over here to the properties before you draw the section, there are different types of sections you can create. You can create a wall section or a working section. For now, you don't need to worry about those. Those are a little bit beyond this class, but just make sure you have building section selected. So now let's crop it that way. Oh, another thing you have the option to do, once you've created it, if you click it, there is this little arrow. If you want it to look the opposite direction, you can use this arrow to flip it. Okay, so I'm going to, excuse me, bring in that crop. I'll pull this back. I'm actually going to set it to 1 inch, just like the other one. And then we will bring that tag in closer. We'll shut off that tag on that end. And the other thing we need to do is name it. So we'll call this one cross section. And click OK. Now let's just open it up and make sure we got the whole building, top and bottom. And now you can see that in this view, you're also able to see the section marker going the other direction. So if you wanted to quickly jump to that, you could double click on the view and it would show you the view. You can also see Revit's automatically put in the section marker for the view you just created in your original section. So it's nice that you can always see those markers, but I'm going to shut off that end on both of these views. Okay, and you can see I cropped the roof out a little bit. So we'll bring that back. And then we're going to hide the crop region. And there you go. Now we've made our first longitudinal section and cross section. Now we just need to put it on sheets. So we're going to go down to sheets, right click on them, and we'll create new sheet. Click OK. Now we have our new sheet. We're going to fill it out. We'll just name this sheet sections, and we'll fill in BJW. Okay. Now let's drag those on to the sheet. And let's just make sure they fit and that it looks nice visually. That's probably good enough for now. So now there are two sections and they are named and they're to scale and everything looks good on the sheet. It's one thing I will take points off if your sheets look disorganized or if you haven't named your views. You should always be thinking before you turn something in this class, can the instructor, me, understand what you've done on the sheet? Can he understand what he's looking at based on the names of the views and the way I've arranged it on the sheet? Because that's the pattern of thinking you need for the professional world. You are creating these drawings not for yourself. You already know what's going on with the building because you designed it. What you're trying to do is communicate to someone who doesn't know anything about the building. You're trying to communicate to them what you want them to do. So you need to be thinking every time you create a sheet, can someone who's never seen this project and knows nothing about it, can they understand what I'm trying to communicate on this sheet? And if the answer is no, you need to make some changes. Or if the answer is maybe, you should still look on to what you can improve. Like, is everything I'm trying to say clear? So that's just a pattern of thinking you need to get into to be successful in the real world. It's a hard thing to grade on and to teach, but I will deduct points if it's confusing to look at your sheets, because in real life, you'll get fired for it if you consistently do poor work and make confusing sheets. Okay, so that's how you do sections. I'll see you in the next video.